December the 12th, 1910, 25-year-old heiress Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold disappeared from New York City. Dorothy was an American socialite whose father, Francis R. Arnold, made his fortune importing perfume. Dorothy graduated from the prestigious Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania in 1905, majoring in literature and language. After returning home to her family at 108 East 79th Street, she intended to become a writer. In the spring of 1910, she submitted a short story to McClure's magazine, but was rejected. Unfortunately, she received no family support for her writing endeavours, and they teased her about the rejection. Not to be deterred, she decided to hide any further correspondence from her family and rented a post office box. In November 1910, she submitted a second short story to McClure's called The Poinsettia and the Flame, but was again rejected. According to her friend, this left Dorothy dejected and embarrassed. No doubt feeling she was getting no support from home and seeking some independence, she asked her father if she could take an apartment in Greenwich Village to continue with her writing. But he rejected her request, stating that a good writer can write anywhere. Dorothy continued with the writing, but could find no success. At the same time, Dorothy had been having a relationship with a 42-year-old engineer called George Griscom Jr., who came from a wealthy Pennsylvanian family, whom she'd met whilst at college. On September the 10th, Dorothy had lied to her parents, telling them she was visiting an old classmate in Boston, but had instead spent a week with Griscom in a hotel. Her parents later found that she'd pawned $500 worth of jewellery to finance their week-long stay. On arriving home, her parents forbade her to continue the relationship with Griscom Jr., but Dorothy continued to correspond with him. On the morning of December the 12th, 1910, Dorothy informed her parents that she was going shopping for a dress to wear at her sister Marjorie's upcoming debutante ball. Her mother offered to go with her, but Dorothy refused and said she would call her if she found a suitable dress. She left home about 11 a.m. with approximately $25 to $30 in her possession, which would be equivalent to $600 to $800 today. Dorothy walked from her home on 79th Street to the Park and Tifford store at the corner of 5th Avenue. Whilst there, she purchased a box of chocolates, which she charged to her account, and then walked to Bryn Mawr's bookstore, where she purchased Engaged Girl Sketches by Emily Calvin Blake. Staff claimed she was courteous and showed no unusual behaviour. One staff member, Gladys King, said she spoke about her sister's party and was in good spirits. King also said that Dorothy intended to walk through Central Park, where King last saw her on 27th Street just before 2 p.m, where she saw her turn and wave for a second time. When Dorothy failed to return home for dinner, her family immediately became concerned and called her friends, but nobody had seen her. On December 13th, a friend of Dorothy's called Elsie Henry rang Dorothy's mother asking whether she had returned home. In order to keep her disappearance a secret, her mother hesitated and told her that Dorothy had gone to bed with a headache. Realising that the daughter was now missing, they failed to notify the police for fear that it would draw unwanted attention and could become socially embarrassing. So they instead notified a family friend and lawyer called John S. Keith. A short time later, Keith arrived at the house and searched her bedroom, but found all of her personal belongings were still there. He also found personal letters with foreign postmarks on her desk, 2 folders for transatlantic steamers, and burned papers in the fireplace, which he presumed were rejected manuscripts. Over the following weeks, he visited jails, hospitals and morgues, but to no avail. He then suggested to the family that they hire the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The Pinkertons followed the same path as Keith, but could find no trace of her. They also questioned friends, old classmates, without success. They followed up on the transatlantic steamer paperwork that Keith had found on her desk, believing she could have eloped with a man to Europe. They searched marriage records without any luck. Pinkertons even sent men overseas to search steamliners arriving from New York without any luck. With all of their avenues exhausted, the Pinkertons finally advised the family to contact the police. The police immediately advised Francis Arnold to hold a press conference to gain publicity, which he initially rejected but eventually agreed. On January the 25th, 1911, approximately 6 weeks since she went missing, reporters were informed of her disappearance. Arnold offered a reward of $1,000, which today would be worth approximately $27,000 for any information about his daughter. Reporters suggested she could have run away because he did not agree with her relationship. He denied the accusation but added that he would like her to associate with someone with brains and position rather than with men who have nothing to do. He was alluding to her affair with George Grissom Jr. At the time of her disappearance, he was vacationing with his parents in Florence, Italy, and claimed that he knew nothing about her disappearance. Dorothy's mother Mary and her brother John even travelled to Italy to further interrogate him, but Grissom denied any knowledge. They even wanted to see all the love letters she'd written to him, but found nothing in them. That same month, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that hotel clerks at a hotel Grissom Jr. was staying claimed to have seen a veiled woman, whom they believed to be Dorothy Arnold, who appeared to be talking quietly while at the same time appearing agitated. In the following months, George Grissom Jr. spent thousands of dollars putting ads in newspapers pleading for her to come home. Almost 2 months after her disappearance, police still believed she was alive and would come home on her own accord. Her father now believed she'd been seriously assaulted in Central Park and her body thrown into the reservoir. But police dismissed the theory because at the time she went missing, the reservoir was frozen. Police thoroughly searched Central Park and even the reservoir when it thawed, but found nothing. Police then sent out circulars with a picture and physical description throughout the United States, Canada and Mexico. New York Times continued daily coverage. Police would receive phone calls without luck, and fake kidnappers were asking for ransom money of up to $5,000. In early February 1911, her father received a postcard signed Dorothy with a New York postmark saying, "I am safe." But everyone believed it to be a cruel joke and believed they had faked her signature from samples in newspapers. A jeweller in San Francisco claimed that a woman resembling Dorothy had a diamond ring engraved for her on January the 7th with the inscription to AJA from ERB, December the 10th, 1910. After Dorothy had been missing for 75 days, the police believed the worst and declared her deceased and a missing person. There were many theories about her disappearance, from slipping on ice and suffering from amnesia, that she'd been drugged and abducted. Grissom Jr. believed she'd taken her own life due to the short stories being rejected. Others believed she'd taken her life because of a failed relationship with Grissom Jr. Another widespread rumour was that she'd gotten pregnant but had lost her life with a failed abortion and then secretly disposed of her body. The family attorney, John Keith, received a tip that she was in a Pittsburgh sanitarium, but on checking found it was not Dorothy. In April 1916, a convicted felon called Edward Glenoris, who was at the time in prison in Rhode Island, claimed he was paid $250 to bury the body of a young woman in December 1910. He then met a man called Little Louie, and the two met another man called Doc, and a well-dressed man who fitted the description of Grissom Jr. They then drove an unconscious woman to a house in New Jersey. He believed the woman was Dorothy Arnold and was able to identify a signet ring that she owned. The next day, they were asked to finish the job. He was told by Doc that she had passed during an operation. She was then wrapped in a sheet and eventually buried in a cellar. Police followed up his story and excavated numerous cellars in the area but found nothing. Years after her disappearance, there were numerous supposed sightings, and the family continued to receive fake letters claiming to be Dorothy. In the weeks following her disappearance, Francis Arnold spent approximately $250,000 trying to find his daughter and believed she'd been kidnapped and lost her life the same day she disappeared. It is believed that the hunt for Dorothy Arnold was one of the largest searches in that period and did much to develop modern newspaper police coverage. Overall, newspapers followed the case with many false leads. Despite all of the publicity that the case engendered, along with the intense investigation that lasted for years, no concrete theory was ever established as to her disappearance. What do you think? Was there foul play involved, or did she fake her own disappearance to escape from her oppressive family?